I'm Monica Charette, and this is Holding the Light.
As long as you love, I will whisper in your ear. Little whispers you will hear. As long as you love.
I recently had the pleasure of reconnecting with Ann Ryan. Ann is a retired nurse enjoying life with her 2 grown daughters and their families. But she is also painfully living each day without her son, Ernie. 23 years ago, while in training to serve in the United States Marine Corps, Ernie suddenly died at the age of 24. He has been gone almost as long as he lived. Ann recounts the phone call every parent fears. How she is accepting her reality and finding ways to live each day to the fullest in her son's honor. She also shares how music helped her through her darkest hours, which led us to our podcast theme song. Ann's courage is matched only by her kindness, sharing her story so that others can find hope along the difficult and sometimes very long journey of child loss. Join us as Colby and I hold the light with Ann Ryan. And we're so glad you're here with us, Ann. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I know your son, Ernie, was entering the U.S. Marine Corps. We've talked about this when he passed. And, you know, every parent, I suppose, who has a child in the military surely lives in fear of that call, the one that you received. But yours was different. And I wondered if you could tell us about that phone call.
Yes, I'd be happy to. The phone call came on October 3rd, 1999 at 8 o'clock in the morning. Ernie had been in the Marine Corps 1 week that day when I got the phone call. And I fortunately, my sister and her husband were visiting me from Massachusetts. 5 weeks prior, I had just moved from Central Maine to Kennebunk. And it was a colonel, I believe, in the United States Marine Corps calling to tell me that my son was gravely ill. And did he have any pre-existing conditions? And of course, my response was, no, he's healthy as a horse. And I'm a nurse, so I was asking the questions, you know, what's going on? He's just very sick. He's very, very sick, which those weren't the answers I was looking for. They weren't specific, and they told me nothing.
That's so frightening.
Yeah, and I don't know how long we talked on the phone. It could have been 5 minutes. It could have been 20 minutes. I don't know. But I immediately got off the phone and called my ex-husband, his dad, and told him. And while we were talking, I told him that I had forgotten to say that there was diabetes in the family because my brother-in-law is a insulin-dependent diabetic, and, you know, I just hadn't thought of that. So, you know, could that have been what was going on? We didn't know. So I gave him the colonel's phone number, and he made that phone call, and I called my daughters. And we all knew it was grim. Mm. I think the first words to my ex-husband were, I don't know if you pray or not these days, but I suggest you start praying right now. And anyway, the day began. My sister and her husband got up, and an old friend of mine also lived in Kennebunk, and we were all supposed to go out to breakfast that morning, and so gathered at the house, the new house that wasn't even really unpacked, and sat and waited. I knew. I knew.
What did you know? Did you know that he was that gravely ill?
I knew in my heart he was gone, and I don't know how I knew that, but I knew that. I knew.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They say a mother's intuition, right?
Yeah, And I don't know if I shared this with you before, but the Thursday night before Ernie died, I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a being standing over me. And I have a strong faith in God, by the way. I'm grateful for that because a lot of people don't. And for me, it's been most helpful. But this being, I don't believe in this stuff, but this being looked statuesque, standing over me. It was gold and was just looking down at me. It was big. I don't know how big, 6 feet tall. I don't know. And I was awake. I was not asleep. And it looked down at me. It's very sadly. And I looked up and I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, be gone from me. I said that. And I turned over and I put the pillow over my head and I think I went back to sleep. But it was not a dream, it was real. And the next day, my sister and her husband were coming. And so my other bedroom had single beds in it. So I was changing the sheets on my bed and for them. And I said, oh, I'm sure glad I'm not sleeping in this bedroom tonight. So, that was just kind of strange. I believe it was an angel of God come down because my son was dying at that time and I didn't know it. I didn't know. And my mother had died 8 months prior to that.
Oh my gosh.
She was in her 80s and had been sick. I'm grateful she wasn't alive to experience the loss of a grandchild. None of the grandparents were alive, which I'm so grateful for. And my sister and I, that Saturday night, we were watching an old video of, I think it was my mother's 75th birthday party, which was kind of fun for us to sit and watch and enjoy. And my sister said to me, do you smell that, Ann? I said, no. And she said, it's Mom's perfume. Can't you smell it? And I said, no, I didn't. But she did. So this just, and my son was dying all this time. Anyway, so maybe these were just forewarning. I don't know what. But I knew he was gone. I knew. And so the wait began, and there were different calls back and forth. My ex-husband lived in New Sweden, Maine, and he and his wife drove down from New Sweden. My daughter Lisa lived in Clinton, and she drove down. And she bought a pack of cigarettes that day. She had stopped smoking long before, and she bought a pack of cigarettes, which I didn't know until way after. But, people do what they do to cope. And my daughter Lynn was busy moving a friend in Western Mass, and her friend said, you go be with your mother. Mm-hmm. You go be with your mother. And so we gathered, and the wait began. And I don't know what time. My daughter Lynn had called somebody in the Marine Corps. And she was all excited because she was young and she was naive. And she said, Mom, they're coming to the house to talk to us. And I said, of course they are, because I knew. I've watched enough movies. Mm-hmm. I know what that means when the Marines come. And they did, and they showed up. My ex-husband, obviously coming from the distance he did not make it there for that, which was good for him. But you can only get from the county so quickly.
That's true.
To the southern part of the state. So we looked outside, and there were two Marines in their dress uniforms walking in, and my best friend from when I was 16 and my sister were with me. And I wanted to run away. And I tried to, but there was only one way out. And I would have had to go to the sunroom and jump out of the sunroom. And so I knew that wasn't going to work. But my sister and my best friend held me up when these two young Marines who'd never had to do this, they'd had to go home and put their dress uniforms on. And it was before the war, so they really had not experienced this before. And
It's a very formal process.
it is very formal. It's very formal. And yeah. And they didn't know, except that he'd been sick and they had to do CPR and they took him to the hospital and he died. And but that wasn't the worst moment for me. It was in that I knew what they were coming to tell me, and I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to have to actually face it. So I was trying to escape, but there was nowhere to escape to. So, yeah.
You said that
and
wasn't the worst part? What was the worst part, then?
Well, living with it the rest of my life.
Of course. Of course.
Having it be a part of my reality. Those first few days and months and years, I was numb. But that night, other friends came. My friend Donna called different people to tell them. My sister called people. And some friends from Waterville came down, and two of them were sleeping on the floor in my bedroom, and my daughters and I were sleeping in the bed together. And I remember waking up and crying. And one of my friends, who was very spiritually minded, grabbed a hold of my feet and started praying.
Do you remember that being helpful?
It was comforting. It was comforting. And because, again, that reality was there. Somebody gave me a tranquilizer or something, and I don't like to take things like that. But there was a time when you just needed to catch a breath. So I had probably taken one and gotten a couple of hours of sleep. And then, it hit me again. And there she was, holding onto my feet and praying.
Yeah, it's the reality afterwards. I remember waking up every day and thinking this must be a dream and just being so shocked that it wasn't a dream. It was my reality now.
Yeah, it's like, well, I remember going shopping with my daughters to Macy's in South Portland to get dresses to wear. The military paid for all of our clothes, by the way. Thanks a lot. I'm saying that very sarcastically, but that was okay. And here we were into this real world where people were talking and laughing and having fun. And how can the world still be going on? How can you be functioning and living and happy? Don't you know what I'm going through? Don't you know the loss? Yeah. Yeah. Those first days were horrible. But back to these are just my experiences, and I don't know if I've shared them before again, but that first year I was in this house in this bedroom, and every morning I'd wake up and I'd say that, and it was a big bedroom. I'd look up, and all around the periphery of my ceiling, I'd see these angels. No kidding.
Wow.
And I'm like, am I losing my mind here? What's going on? And I didn't tell anybody for a long, long time. Then I told my friend that I've been friendly with since I was 16. And she said, no, I don't think you're crazy. And then I happened to tell my friend who had been holding on to my feet that first night. And she said, of course, those are angels, and we've all been praying for God's angels to surround you. Now, does that give you goosebumps?
Yes, a
What?
lot, actually.
Wow. So I'm glad I'm a believer because I was open to that. You have to be open to that too, I think. And but that was my experience. It didn't make it any easier. I can't. But those are some things that happened to me, and we had problems with getting my son's body home.
Tell me about that.
So he died on a Sunday. We didn't know when they were going to release the body because they had to do an autopsy, of course. We didn't know when they were going to release the body. And I think they were supposed to release it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And the colonel called me because there were many problems. I talked to him many, many times. He said, "You're not going to believe what happened." And I said, "What happened now?" They forgot to put his body on the plane. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whoa,
Mm-hmm.
no, you did not tell me that ever.
Yeah, yeah. It was like, I started laughing. What are you going to do? I mean, what? How could they forget? Because they have guards. They guard the body in the Marine Corps. They got 24 hours
Oh,
a
wow.
day. Yeah. So I don't know what happened there, but that was just, So we, meanwhile, trying to plan. And back then, I mean, today I would have had him cremated, but I didn't even think about that back then. It was just I lost my son. And yeah. And anyway, so we did finally manage to arrange calling hours and a funeral. And
Don't you find it pretty amazing that you did that? When you look back on that, I mean, you're in a complete fog, and yet you have to make some of the most important decisions of your life.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. we decided. I mean, my kids were raised Catholic, but they've all gone there. They all went their own routes after, and that was fine. I just wanted them to have some sort of a religious upbringing. And so, when it came to where, and it didn't have to be in the Catholic Church for sure, and it was at the funeral home. But my in-laws were in Pittsfield. My kids spent a lot of time with Grammy and Grampy in Pittsfield, and my ex-husband and I decided that we would do this in Pittsfield, and so that's where it all it happened, and we found a minister she used to be Jewish, recovering alcoholic, gay. She was wonderful. Absolutely. She's a Methodist minister, and she was wonderful. She was absolutely wonderful. She rode with my son's body in the hearse to the cemetery praying, which I don't know if minister, priests, or rabbis do that, but she did that. And she was a friend of my daughter and my son-in-law who live here. So,
what about your daughters? So they're young adults then, right? What was their
Yeah.
reaction to all of this, and how did you help them?
I can't say I helped them, quite frankly. I was too grief-stricken, and I knew they hurt.
Colby can relate to that.
But I was too much in my own grief to reach out to them. It's changed them both. My younger daughter has traveled all over the world with her husband and her kids. And she was not married. Neither of them were married. And they were 29 and 31. Yeah, so I think something like that. So, but kids get married older these days anyway. But one was married 7 or 8 months later, the other one 7 months later than that. And then I had two grandsons 5 weeks apart. So I think they came to realize that you better grab the gold ring while you see it, because it might pass you by, and do things, live your life to the fullest. I told earlier, I reminded my oldest daughter that I was going to be doing this again tonight. And she said, because, my son was the youngest, right? And he was not a planned pregnancy. And he was a boy. I had two girls, Oh, you mean you're going to be talking about your favorite child? and and I said, yeah, I'm going to be talking about my favorite child. But they always, the three of them really enjoyed each other. They had fun together. They teased each other a whole lot. And so there's still that bantering going on even as he's no longer here,
Well, that keeps his memory alive, right? In many ways.
Yeah, and it keeps it alive the way he'd want it to be kept alive, he was fun. He was funny. And you knew he was in the room when he walked into the room. Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
A couple of years after he died, it was maybe 3 years, because Lynn, I think my daughter Lynn was pregnant with her second child, another boy, and Ernie's best friend got married, Josh, and we were invited to the wedding, and we went, and Josh was waiting outside of the church when I walked in, and he had a corsage for me. And he asked me if I'd come sit with his mother and father. And I did. And I guess it was a very sweet thing for him to do. It was one of the toughest things I ever did. And then at the reception, when the best man got up to do the toast, he said, I wasn't supposed to be here today. Josh's best friend Ernie was supposed to be here today, but he couldn't make it. So I'm stepping in for him. Yeah. That was tough. And it was sweet. But I wanted to run. I wanted to run out of the room again. I wanted to escape, And I could have, because there wasn't just one way out, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't. But yeah, that was tough.
Those things are hard, but they're meaningful. They're so meaningful.
And I think it was a way of healing for Josh. And I don't know if I told you, but when Ernie was gone 10 years, we had a party in celebration of his life. And I had a big home that I had purchased in Kennebunk. I was living in an apartment when he died, but I had this nice home, and invited all of Ernie's friends, both of my daughters, all of their friends, family, my friends, and had all the food that Ernie liked to eat. And it was a nice time. It was fun. And then we did a toast to Ernie, and Josh did the toast, his best friend. So, yeah.
That's nice. I love that idea.
Yeah, I don't know where it came to me from, but I think, again, my ex-husband and I were talking, and we said we should do something, and let's have a party. Let's celebrate who Ernie was, and do fun things. And we did. And he loved food. So we had some great food there. when I was working in Portland, I worked on India Street, and the original Amato's is on India Street, and they catered it for me, so it was good food. But yeah, memories. That was at 10 years, and here it is 23. And sometimes I look up at his picture and I shed a tear. Yeah.
How could you not?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes it's easier than other times, you know?
Yeah. Talk to me about the timeline. You and I have talked about this many times because, it's been 23 years since he passed. So he's been gone almost as long as he lived.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that because that's going to happen, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, and I asked you so many times. I think it was like a couple of years after Cassidy passed, and I said, "How do you survive this? I mean, how do you tell another broken heart how they're going to survive this? Because you're still here, Anne, and you're still celebrating his life in many ways. I know it's hard.
When we were at the funeral home, a friend sat behind me, and another nurse who had lost her son about 4 years prior. And I leaned back and I said, "Does it ever get any easier?" And she said, "It doesn't get easier. Sometimes it becomes more distant." And I have found that to be true. Sometimes I have a hard time remembering what his voice sounded like. And that makes me sad,
I worry about that.
Yeah. But the essence is always going to be with you. The essence of Cassidy's going to be with you both, like Ernie with me, and his sisters who choose to remember the fun.
And so, Anne, you mentioned that you're somebody who's, pretty spiritual. And it's been such a long time since Ernie's passing. Where do you see his spirit today? In what places in society or in nature do you see Ernie?
Not so much in nature. I see him in my grandsons. Yeah. And it's funny, my grandson Ben, who lives here on the property, he's 20. Blonde hair, blue-eyed, tall, skinny. That does not describe Ernie at all. But both his mother, Lisa, and I sometimes call him Ernie. So it's something about him, familial. I don't know what it is. Sometimes I wonder about reincarnation. I used to laugh. My mother used to believe in that. I don't know what I believe in as far as that goes, but
that essence is there that you mentioned earlier.
That essence is there, and I see it in my other grandsons too. Just little things. I'm not living right near them, but when I see them, there's something about them, yeah, I see it. And that makes me feel good, Colby. Yeah.
Yeah, we all need those things to find joy in our lives. What other things do you need? Like, what do you need from people now? What do you need from friends? Because it's different from what you needed 2 decades ago.
I want friends to feel comfortable to talk to me about Ernie. And most of my friends know that, so it's not like a taboo subject. And I remember again, my son-in-law's aunt had lost a son to diabetes, and she said to me, "Anne, anytime you want to talk to me about Ernie, please do, because I love to talk to people about my son George. I love to hear his name." And yeah, and some people are afraid because they just don't know. Today, I went out to lunch with a friend, and we went to. Have you ever been to Mac's Grill in Lewiston? If you like steak, it's a good place to go. It's been around a long time. Yeah, Mac's Grill. And I had found a gift certificate. Now, Ernie died in 1999, but my head wasn't screwed on straight for years. I don't know that it is yet, but that I found a gift certificate to Max Grill from 2004 that my daughter Lynn had given me, and some people I know had just been to Max Grill. So I found my gift certificate, and so I said to my friend, "You want to go?" So we did, and I showed it to the waitress. I said, "I don't know if this is good or not." I said I'd lost my son, and She said, "Oh, that's an old Max Grill's gift certificate," and she said, "Let me go show this to my boss." And of course, he said yes. And she said, She said to me, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about you losing your son." I said, "Thank you." She said, "I can't even let my head go there." And I said, "And nobody wants you to even think about it. No, not at all. People don't understand. And the only way one does understand is if you live through it. And none of us want anybody to live through it, to experience it." Um, I have a friend whose grandson took his own life, and a year to the day, her daughter, the mother of the young boy, took her life. And that's a lot.
Yeah, that's the I can't imagine it, but we're also living the I can't imagine it.
You're right. Somebody gave me, I'm sure you got a lot of books and stuff from people, as I did, and on grief. And one book, it was just little sayings, might be short paragraphs or a half a page or whatever. And this one woman had lost 4 children. And I'm like, here I am in the depths of my grief. And I'm like, no, I can't imagine that. The day of my son's funeral, I stayed in this house, and I remember being in the hallway upstairs, all dressed and ready to go to the funeral, and I said, "God, I cannot do this." I said it out loud, and a voice said to me, "Yes, you can do this. Your grandmother did it twice, not once, but twice." My grandmother lost 2 sons. One at age 19 to peritonitis from appendicitis. It was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And one from myocardial infarction, and he was 41. When I heard that voice say that, I took a deep breath and said, "I can do this." So there are messages. One thing that brought me solace, and I had seen a TV news program, and there was this woman on, her name was Cindy Bullins. And Cindy Bullins had been a backup singer for Elton John. And she had lost a daughter to lymphoma or something like that. And her daughter was young, 8 or 9 years old. And she'd written this music. And this is in September of 1999. I think, oh, that's nice for people who've lost kids. Little did I know. Apparently, one of my daughters had seen that too. And when my son died, they bought me the CD. I recommend it. It's called Somewhere Between Heaven and Earth. It is, I've got goosebumps. That music saved my life because she knew. And she was a beautiful music writer. And I highly recommend it. She is now no longer Cindy Bullins, but Sydney Bullins. So she's had a transformation in her life, but she's helped a lot of people. But the grim reality is the grim reality. My son will never get married, will never have children, will never be whoever he was supposed to be. I don't know who that was going to be. He was finding himself, and
That's hard to accept.
it's very hard to accept. And as much as I hate it, I do believe we're here on this earth as long as we're supposed to be. I don't like it. But it seems to be, why do some people survive these crazy things like that freak accident with your daughter?
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I accept it. I have to accept it or I'd be a very bitter person. And I decided I would live life to my fullest. And there's a lot of things I haven't done that I've been procrastinating. Like I used to paint. I used to be a watercolorist. And I have bought paints and paper and stuff, and it's sitting there. But I joined a watercoloring group, so maybe there's hope for me. I don't know, but I have to find joy in life, and some days are better than others for sure. But as I said to you before, Ernie was a person who lived life to the fullest, and he wouldn't want any of us to be sitting feeling sorry for ourselves. He'd want us to live life, And so we all do. Yeah, we all do.
I feel like as long as I've known you, you've always lived your life to the fullest. You're very very courageous and thoughtful of other people. And when we close our podcast each episode, we like to give our guests the opportunity to reflect on how you would like our listeners to remember Ernie.
I would like people to remember Ernie as a young man, handsome young man, because he was, with a great smile, a wonderful personality, love in his heart, and the world was open to possibilities for him that it just never happened for him. But he died living his dream, and that dream was to become a Marine. And, he got his blues before anybody else in his group because he was buried in his blues. So he achieved his dream, and we lost a beautiful soul. I think God gained an angel. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, it takes a lot of courage for you to share your story, and I don't know, your personal loss is really in such a graceful way. So I appreciate you doing this. I know it's very difficult, but I also know that other people are inspired by your words today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. If I can help one person, it's worth it. Thank you.
Wow,
thank you for doing this. It's beautiful that you guys are doing this. You are two very courageous people.
As long as you love.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this podcast helpful, please share our link with others and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. I'm Monica Charette, reminding you that you are never alone in your grief. Until next time, we'll be right here with you, holding the light.
As long as